Well, let's start here with an unprecedented look inside Elon Musk's operation to slim down our federal government. Musk and members of his team at DOGE sat down for an exclusive interview with Bret Baier last night. It did not disappoint. Elon Musk laying out the ultimate goal for DOGE.
Our goal is to reduce the deficit by $1 trillion. We want to reduce the spending by eliminating waste and fraud, reduce the spending by 15%, which seems really quite achievable. The government is not efficient, and there's a lot of waste and fraud.
All those people around Elon Musk, well, those were members of the top DOGE team, some of his engineers, many of whom have experience leading multi-billion-dollar corporations like X, Microsoft, Airbnb. They're at the top of their industry, and they've seen this government waste for themselves.
We routinely encounter wastes of $1 billion or more, casually. For example, like the simple survey that was literally 10-question survey that you could do with SurveyMonkey cost you about $10,000.
The first thing that got me really excited about DOGE was learning basically the state of government computers. By some estimates, government IT costs about $100 billion, and it's funding systems that are over 50 years old.
There are over 15 million people that are over the age of 120 that are marked as alive in the Social Security system.
It turns out there is actually a mine in Pennsylvania that houses every paper document for the retirement process in the government. So the process takes many months, and we're going to make it just many days.
Casual taxpayer billions, just toss it here and here. That's what they found. Well, one DOGE engineer, Tyler Hassan, says he gave up running multiple businesses to help serve his country.
Last thing, do you guys all see this as a patriotic duty? I mean, is that really what this is about?
It's essential.
Right. I do, 100%. I was running 5 businesses in Houston, and I left that. I left great people to do this, and my wonderful wife said, go for it. And here I am. But I feel like this is me giving back to the country.
Lisa, this was fascinating for so many reasons. If you do a ChatGPT search of what these individuals have been called, you find techno-authoritarian idealists, out-of-touch disruptors, unelected shadow policymakers, cult of personality operatives, or my favorite, billionaire enablers of privatized governance. Well, they seem pretty methodical, smart, and people who I'd want working with my money as it's taxpayer money.
Yeah, I mean, I would call them patriots, public servants, people who don't need to be doing this, but chose to do it to make the country better. To your point, Kaylee, the media wants us to believe that DOGE is just a bunch of 18-year-olds playing Call of Duty in their parents' basement, right? and what we saw is, tech billionaire, Airbnb founder, CEOs, CFOs, rocket scientists who are all in DOGE. And it's not just about reducing the federal workforce and cutting spending. It's about making the government more efficient as well. You've got bringing a business mind to government and changing that dynamic. And I think one thing that people don't discuss as much is the Biden administration. Joe Biden grew the federal workforce by around 5%. And one thing that was noted last night was that only 0.15% of the federal workforce have been given reduction in force notices. So look at those two different numbers, the amount that Joe Biden has grew the federal government and just the slight reduction in the federal workforce we've seen so far. And a lot of those employees were probationary employees. They're supposed to be in a trial period. Those are most of the ones that have been fired. So, the media's coverage of this has been so antithetical to what we saw last night.
So that was the part that stood out to me, because the media narrative has been these are callous, heartless people just getting rid of 75% of the federal government. Well, wait, let's bring in the guy who gives us the actual number of who's been terminated.
President Trump's been very clear. It's scalpel, not hatchet, and that's the way it's getting done. And then once those decisions are made, there's a very heavy focus on being generous, being caring, being compassionate, and treating everyone with dignity and respect. And if you look at how people have started to leave the government, it is largely through voluntary means. And you've heard a lot of news about rifts, about people getting fired. At this moment in time, less than 0.15, not 1.5, less than 0.15 of the federal workforce has actually been given a RIF notice.
Pretty interesting, Larry.
You know, when I interviewed Elon a couple months ago, again and again during that interview, he said, I want to save America from bankruptcy. It's a very important point. He doesn't get credit for it, as you said in your opening. The media won't give him any credit. But that was his principle. He is a patriot, as Lisa said. I want to save America from bankruptcy. So they're finding $4 billion a day so far. By the way, it's all up on a website. It's completely transparent. They've found $130 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse up to now. He's going to stay the course. He's probably going to do it for at least another year. That's what he told me. He thinks $500 billion of savings is something they can easily find. He thinks they can get to $1 trillion if they stay with it until the middle of next year. And by the way, very important point, there's a lot of talk about we're putting together a big reconciliation budget package, which will cut taxes and will cut spending in order to grow the economy and keep the inflation rate back down. Look, they are going to use his savings and put it into a rescission package. That means essentially take back the money that was supposed to have been spent. It's like ripping up a check, if you will. So this is going to have profound budget implications. It's also going to make all these federal agencies better and more efficient, as they said. And it's also going to allow us not only to stay out of bankruptcy, but my favorite thought, Kayleigh, it will allow us even bigger tax cuts to help the middle class along the way. That's what Elon Musk is doing, and he is a patriot. And somebody needed to do this 1,000,000 years ago, but at least he's doing it now.
And Molly, from a communications perspective, someone needed to get out front and put faces to these DOGE individuals and put numbers. And we heard that. We heard 15 million people at over 120 who are on the Social Security rolls. 40% of the calls coming in are fraudsters. These are hard numbers, facts, and now we have faces behind DOGE.
Oh my, it was so fascinating to see these personalities. Brett did an amazing job kind of bringing out who these individuals were and why they wanted to be a part of this. And one of the things that many of these guys, there's this group of brilliant individuals that understand technology, and what they talked about was the lack of technology in government and the problems it causes. My favorite part of the interview was with Brad Smith. He talked about enhancing healthcare. He says there's 700 different IT systems today at NIH. They can't speak to each other. They have 27 different CAOs. And so when you think about making great medical discoveries, you have to connect the data. So it's interesting to think about what the next step is. Besides finding the waste, besides finding the fraud, solving the problem and creating, a better future.
Yeah, and I do want to do a little blast from the past here on Friday. So let's bring in someone from 2011, President Obama on spending cuts. Watch this.
Everyone knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of, even if we didn't have a deficit.
I mean, Marie, that sounds like DOGE.
I think, well, look, I will be very clear. I support better government efficiency. I think that government could do a lot of things better. The question is DOGE doing it in the right way? And yes, they have a lot of numbers up online but by what Larry said, but a lot of those have already been found to be incorrect or outdated or just the absolutely wrong numbers. They don't have completely transparent numbers up online. But I was watching an interview on another network this morning about a woman in West Virginia. She voted for President Trump. She's fully supportive of him. She is one of these probationary employees, but all of her evaluations from her managers have been stellar, the highest you can get. And yet she was fired by DOGE for poor performance because legally that's the only way they can fire people who are probationary, by saying it's for poor performance. So there's a flip side to this. Do you balance the budget and cut the deficit by actually tackling entitlements, by looking at these tax cuts, much of which go to high-income earners? Or do you do what DOGE is doing, which is Larry, let me finish, I didn't interrupt you. Or do you do it by what DOGE is doing, which is firing veterans at the VA, people who work curing cancer and working on vaccines, right? They are going after government employees who make 50,000. But Kayleigh, those are real Americans.
And to Larry's point,
and they are getting.
Cuts,
wait, let me finish.
Got a tax break all the way down to the lowest.
Kayleigh, those are real Americans, and they are getting fired, and many of them supported Donald Trump. And so politically and morally, at the end of this,
so where do you want to cut, Marie?
We will all.
Marie, where do you want to cut?
I think there's a lot. First of all, I don't think that these tax cuts for the wealthy
by
should
definition
be.
is a short-term period. It's a trial period.
But Lisa, you can't be fired
That's
by
the whole point of a probationary employee.
But in probation, the only way you can be fired is by saying you are poorly performing, and these people are not.
But Marie,
these people are
where's
not.
the Democrat cutting package? Like, where's the proposal?
I can name 5 places we should cut.
Here's the
And
point.
do you think it's fair for America's toddlers to be saddled
Do
with
you
your
think
debt?
it's fair for veterans to be fired by Elon Musk? Do you think that's okay? Do we all think that's okay?
Look, the GAO, General Accounting Office.
Do we all think that's okay? Are you okay
year,
with that, Larry?
Listen, the GAO last year came up with the number of $535 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse. That's the GAO. That was during the Biden years. The GAO this year came up with a number, another $135 billion. What Elon Musk is discovering is no secret. The problem, Marie, is simply this. All these studies have been gathering dust on the shelves, and they have not been used actually to be implemented.
But that's not what they're getting rid of. They're not getting rid of waste.
Everyone
That's not what they're cutting.
And you're on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue.
That's not what they're cutting.
We can bring up an anecdotal account from another network, and we can also bring up the 0.15% number of those who have actually been fired. And we can bring up the fact that Democrats have yet to put forward a plan to cut spending. Instead, they would like for my 2-year-old and 5-year-old to pay their debts. Ask yourself if that's fair.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.